Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast, where we explore cutting-edge strategies to keep teams human-centered, drive innovation, and empower you with the tools and insights needed to help your team excel and thrive in today's rapidly changing world. Your host is Dane, a seasoned expert with over 20 years of experience enhancing team dynamics and innovation. Today, Dane is joined by Puneet Sachdev. Puneet is the founder of the Singularity Lab, which is a management consultancy, which, among other things, specializes in digital HR. Tune in to discover. First, the importance of coaching. Holistic coaching transforms leaders by fostering self-awareness and addressing inner challenges, creating a stronger foundation for team success. Second, the inside question, asking what do you really want on the inside, helps leaders uncover and align with their deeper values and goals. And finally, digital HR and collective alignment, successful digital HR transformation, requires both a focus on present and future needs and stakeholder collaboration to ensure alignment and buy-in. So, teamwork makes the dream work, and we're here to inspire your next collaborative breakthrough. Gather your team or put on your headphones, and let's dive in together.
Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast. My name is Dane, CEO of the Huddle 3 Group, and today I'm joined by Puneet Sachdev. Puneet is the founder of the Singularity Lab, which is a management consultancy, which among other things specializes in digital HR. So we're going to be having a good conversation today around digital HR, and it's great to have you on the show, Puneet.
Thanks very much, Dane. I appreciate the offer.
You bet. So for the benefit of our listeners, perhaps you can give us a bit more of your story. How did you come to be doing this cool work?
Yeah, well, listen, I have been fortunate enough to have lived and worked now in 5 different continents. I'm from India, so I started my journey in Asia, Europe, North America, Africa, back to Europe, Australia most recently, and then I'm currently now based in Santa Monica in LA. So that's where the firm is currently based. And my work has been primarily in people culture, now in more in digital HR, as well as in management consulting. Large corporate organizations like GE and United Airlines, management consulting for companies, and Accenture company while I was here 10 years ago. And a lot of work with scaling tech ventures from fintech, digital healthcare, etc. So organizations from about 100 people to 40,000 people, from a few $1 million to about close to $100 billion in revenue. So I've kind of worked the whole range now. I've been working for 25 years. And more recently, like I mentioned, we built this digital first HR maturity framework, which is where we're kind of doubling down into, given what's happening in generative AI and in the trends, to really help businesses and HR leaders to be able to take a holistic look at their performance ecosystem, how equipped they are in order to leverage and to utilize, or to, let's say, to benefit from the wave of the new tech which is emerging and the new mindsets with the different generations coming into the workplace. Because what I do see is that there is a bit of a tendency to be opportunistic, which is fair enough, looking at ChatGPT and using the LLMs across the last mile. But what about stepping back and looking at it completely differently through a lens of being actually a SaaS operation? An HR is a SaaS operation because you are delivering your services through software quite a lot. So we're getting into that right now. I've published a few things around it, 4 or 5 articles already. Otherwise, I've published a fair amount, about 60 odd articles on the work I keep doing. I keep writing. That's also I keep just learning and just growing myself as well, I suppose. And so that's one part of my life. And the other part is coaching, which I thoroughly enjoy. And once again, over there, for me, it's a very holistic approach. I've worked with really amazing leaders from all over the world. They worked in organizations and the whole range, from Rolls-Royce, Netflix, Disney, the Australian Prime Minister's office. I've coached several founders in the NASDAQ Center in San Francisco. I've been working in them for the last 5 years. And I also run group coaching programs for female leaders in the Arabic countries like Jordan, Tunisia, Lebanon, Palestine. Most of that works on a pro bono basis. Once again, very holistic, mind, body, and spirit, and also introducing functional health into the work which I'm doing. I leveraged the time I spent in a Buddhist monastery, learning about mindfulness, Buddhist philosophies, my work with Native Indians when I was here in California 10 years ago, in Santa Cruz specifically.
Hmm.
I worked with Joe Dispenza understanding quantum physics, neuroscience of change, and now I'm really curious about archetypal psychology. So I kind of, bring all these different strands into, I mean, it's in the moment, it's very in the moment, but uh, I have a curiosity about the human spirit for my own self and otherwise, which I bring into the work which I do. And last but not the least, creatively, I have written and published kids' stories. Right now, I'm working on a memoir to turn into a film as a birthday gift for my little daughter.
Oh, wonderful. I don't know how we're going to fit it all into 40 odd minutes. We're going to have to set up a series of podcasts here and conversations. But I'm just so excited to dive into some of these topics, Puneet. Um, I want to start with coaching because you mentioned that sort of curiosity about human spirit, and what you describe of coaching does seem very holistic. So maybe you can tell me a little bit more about how you see those leaders that you work with kind of go through their journey, and how that excites you, and how it excites the environment, the conditions that they create for their teams.
For sure. Now, so there are different kinds of personas of leaders I work with. Let's just focus on the executive leaders for 1 second because there are a few different kinds of people that I'm always working with.
Yeah.
And I think generally they tend to be, I mean, just by happenstance, 80% tend to be women leaders. That's how it's just panned out. I've not planned for it that way. I work with men as well. I think it is usually when they're at a point of transition, is I think when I do the best work with them.
Yeah.
And it's very clear in terms of high performance. If you take the equivalent of an athlete to perform to their best, they have an whole entourage around them. They have somebody who's looking at their physiology, they're looking at the diet, they're looking at all these different elements.
Hmm.
So, see, many of these things actually I have used on myself, or I've been at different stages of learning through my life, right?
Yeah.
Or whether it's been working with functional health experts or running or exercising and trying to optimize for that, or it is just the spiritual curiosity which I've had. I mean, fortunately, when I was very young, I managed to spend time practice Buddhism, and I was in that environment for a while, and then from there, various other modalities of spirituality. A lot of it came to the forefront or got accelerated with the separation, the divorce, which I found was extremely, excruciatingly painful for me.
Hmm.
Just completely internally destroyed. I was dealing with just everything in the world and the whole weight of the world on my shoulders.
Yeah.
The whole, the mental health stuff, depression, anxiety, so much of self doubt. I still remember I was sitting in. I wanted to go to the gym, and I was in my parking lot for 30 minutes. I was frozen, sitting behind the wheel of the car, not knowing if I should go or not to go. That was the level of indecision and self doubt I was going through.
Yeah.
And the only way for me to deal with that was to go internally and internally because nobody else could solve that problem for me. Fortunately for me, I've had incredible teachers who taught me about the inner world, right? Incredible teachers who've come all along the way. One has handed me off to the other, to the third, to the fourth. So I almost feel
Yeah.
that part of something which I have to bring back into the world, the people that I work with. I am also trained like a proper, like a executive coach, definitely do that.
Yeah.
But I feel with all this, what naturally, I suppose, the gift which I have now cultivated because of my own challenges is a level of depth perception which I don't think you can have if you just do a simple executive coaching program. To be able to really get to the cause, to see the unseen, to call it out, but also to have the humanity to stand with a person in that journey because it's such a felt experience that
Mm.
it's not conceptual for me. When somebody says something, I've just experienced so many different things in so many different ways, which I won't get into right now, that there is a very high level of relatability. Like
Yes.
for example, there's this lady in Australia. Actually, she's a public figure over there now. She's written a few books and she's all over the media. She and I were working, and she once made this comment to me saying that, many people have said the same thing what you said to me, but there's something about you which I felt was true, and I believed it, and it changed my world. And the only thing which that comes down to, in my opinion, is just the felt experiences, the lived experience, the having been through it. And when you speak, it comes from a place of truth. It's not conceptual for me, many of these things.
Mm.
And I've done been before the challenges. I've been doing a lot of spiritual work and inner work for more than 20, 25 years. So I feel that is the foundation. Even when I start a coaching session, I'll be happy to stand you one if you ever want to, is that it starts with mindfulness, because I just know that
Yeah.
the game is internal first. If the interiority is not shifted, it's going to be very hard to change, to give them the profound insights and the impact that they deserve, and that these leaders need to have to be able to lead incredible people and to have the change, but also have the inner freedom. What I'm really after is the inner freedom of that person.
Mm.
You may come to
Hmm.
me saying, okay, I have got this business that's generating 10 million, I want to take it to 20 million. Fine, no problem. But I'm always trying to look and see, where can this person get more freedom within themselves?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a bit of that quest for me, the inner quest. Of course, I can talk about business, we can talk about spreadsheets, we can talk about business planning, all that, because that's something which we do on a regular basis. So really there's no hang up. I find that the easier part. I find the
Yeah.
more interesting part is, okay, listening to the words, what are they saying, what are they not saying really over here. That's really fascinating to me. And so that's how I coach right now, and I have a lot of filters. I mean, I have a very detailed discovery questionnaire. I don't do any, let's have a chemistry call for 15 minutes. I will do a complete session with you, because I want to get a sense of who you are. I want you to get a real experience of working with me,
Mm.
and then we sleep over it. If we both are a hell yes, we will work. I work with only a handful of people because I do a lot of work in the consulting, in the consulting space. So I have a limited amount of clients that I work with. And it goes into all sorts of things. I want to know what it was like for them growing up, what was
Yeah.
many things, because I think that makes a very big difference to who we are today. And it solves the puzzle for me. Okay, this makes sense because this was happening over here. That's why the tendency to control is existing. You
Hmm.
know, more recently, there was somebody who was, an organization said, can you work with such and such person? And actually, Australia-based company. And when I was speaking to the person, and the briefing was given to me was, there's a communication thing and a communication gap and this, that, and the other. And I spoke to this guy. If you're going to go down the track of helping him with communication, you will solve nothing. It's got nothing to do with the communication. There are
Yeah.
certain deeper level things which need to be first put in place before this guy's communication can really change to the extent you will see some difference. So, it's a bit of that kind of stuff. So I suppose, um, that's what I enjoy about it, and I feel that I do a very decent job in being able to help call out what is truly inside a human being.
That's neat. I know there are certain people in the world of organizational development, coaching, that have a mindset that we're here to deal with the product of the work and we're not here to deal with the inner work of the person because, who are we to go back into their youth or past career experiences and unearth problems and pain and other things? Do you think that mindset that we see from certain people in the coaching profession or OD profession is one that's more like defensive, protective? Hey, we don't want to get into trouble, or why do you think we see these kind of different philosophies around the inner work?
I would think that one is, of course, how they have been trained and who's trained them and who has given them that message. But also, if I think it's what's the lived experience too, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That if you haven't been through those levels of ups and downs and things like that, it's hard for you to even fathom it unless you educate yourself in that way. And
Yes.
you understand from a human psychology perspective that it's the inner game. Like, it's the inner game first. More so when you're like senior leadership. Because see, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you can work for 20 hours a day and you can do everything.
Yeah.
When you are at your level and you're running a few businesses and you got people, you can't do that. You will not even do whatever you're going to do everything in 72 hours if they're given to you already. You just cannot.
Yeah.
then it's personal power. What is charisma? Charisma is that ability of being self-aware in who you are and knowing that you don't have to necessarily be talking all the time to be charismatic. It's a way of being. And that comes from self-awareness and there. So I
Yeah.
think it's a bit of that. That also it could be a generational mindset too, that this is the way we do it and this is the proper way of doing it. And I think that's shifting. I really think that has to shift. There's no other way. You just cannot do that anymore to create high performing organizations because we have challenged every frontier, at least over here.
Yeah.
And what is left now is to go under the iceberg, so to say, and start working from there.
That's interesting. And I wonder also if it's because in the last 5 years, coaching as a capability in organization has become very popular and
Yeah.
important. And so some organizations are maybe getting caught down to the lowest common denominator. Like we
Yeah.
can't have, a dozen Puneets running around the organization. We're going to give people enough coaching capability and we're going to put guardrails up. So maybe there's
Yeah.
that's driving some of the constraint.
You're right. I think that it's not a coaching for everybody, first of all, but I feel this fundamentally there's so much value in just coaching. For example, see what BetterUp is doing. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Many
Yeah.
people have access to that. You look at the wider world we live in today, it's so fragmented. We are away from our families, higher divorce rates, anxiety, loneliness. I think in a way, the coach is alleviating many of those things by just
Hmm.
this person knowing I have another human being who's just going to listen to me.
Yeah.
And when they feel heard and they feel seen, automatically confidence in you changes. So I think for the large majority of the people, they don't need that work. But I do feel at the leadership level, the senior leadership level,
Yeah.
if you really want to be that and pushing all your frontiers and want to see what you're capable of in a gift, so I think that's where you will need somebody who can look at your world holistically, who can understand the whole thing,
Yeah.
not just your work in one sense. So I feel that you're right. You said it absolutely correctly. That different audience will meet different kinds of people in their lives at different time.
No, I appreciate that. That's a good definition. So when you think of those leaders who have come through that coaching framework with you, that is more holistic, that's pushing at those frontiers, how do you find that they show up differently for their teams once they've become more aware?
Here's the interesting thing, Dane. It's so fascinating. It's like the best analogy that I can give for you is like like you're creating a building, okay, and not you're creating a building, but you are on driving on a road. Where were you? Where were you living in Australia, in Sydney, or?
Brisbane, actually, I lived in a lot of cities. I lived in Sydney too. So you can pick either one.
Anyway, okay, maybe I'm not there. Let's see. Let's just take a simple example. There's a building, and then this building is getting built, and there's scaffolding around it, and you're driving past it and driving past it, and one fine day, the scaffolding is gone and the building is there.
Yes.
I can see it on their face when their inner world has changed, and they come on the camera. I say, "Okay, you have changed. How are
Yeah.
you feeling?" It's on the face. It is very visible. You can just get a sense of relaxation from them straight away.
Yeah.
Something in them has gone click. They have found a part of themselves and it's really gelling for them at this point in time. There may be other times when this again starts unraveling. I
Mm.
think it should be like that. But at least for right now, you just see that it goes click. And I can give you, loads of examples. I'm working with this lady in Malaysia right now. I was working with, still am with one of my clients who was ex Netflix. And the time we started was he was going to make a decision of buying a multi-million dollar business to get into as a CEO of the business and stuff like that. And I think the conversation with him was just when he started sharing with me what he did was just so clear to me. There's no way he's not going to be doing this, what he's thinking about. I don't even remember the language. Half the times I don't remember the language that I said because it just has to be just so much there for the person in that moment.
Yeah.
But just at those critical points, for them to see things differently, for them to realize their own gifts that they have got, and to stand till the time they can completely, it's that place of no longer and not yet, correct?
Yes.
How
Yeah.
do you place in that in? It's in that place and calling it out till the time the belief is created in the person. enough. And the shift becomes that they're more relaxed. They're not chasing a very masculine way of operating in the world,
Yeah.
i.e., carrot and stick, that for
Yeah.
me to be accepted, liked, or etc., I have to do this job. Not really. They're relaxed. They know who they are. This is what I'm going to be doing. Their demeanor shifts, their mannerism shifts, the team around them shifts, how they work with people shifts. Most of all, they're just very comfortable with their own skin, who they are.
Yeah.
That changes a lot for people. And
I
it
love
takes
that.
time. It takes time. Some people, usually between 6 months to a 12-month kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And also, oftentimes, one or two conversations are also enough to make them see the world differently. And I've seen them at discovery conversations. Sometimes that's all they've needed. They just needed to see that differently.
Yeah.
If they want to go on the journey together, then it takes a while. But many times, people one or two conversations, they're already done. They said, okay, this is fantastic. I just need to see things differently. I'm there. I'm sure that other people do that too. I'm not saying that I'm unique in that way. I'm just sharing my experiences with you.
I like that. And actually, that makes me reflect. I like the way you describe that kind of feeling more relaxed. There's a couple of words I always use in my teams, which is like swagger and
Mm.
confidence.
Yeah,
I
totally.
like it when teams come in and they've got a spring in their step. They've got confidence that whatever comes at them, they can turn it and shape it into a positive pathway forwards, that it's not firefighting all of the time. So that feels very tangible, not only for the leader, but for their teams, because,
Yeah,
teams often get very heavily distracted by leaders that are in
totally.
anguish or stressed or struggling.
Totally. Like, for example, I was working with this lady she was working in the Australian Prime Minister's office and she knew kind of her time was done over there.
Yeah.
In her, the journey was to discover who she is as a leader. What's her
Hmm.
brand of leadership? Because once again, especially with women, this is what I see. I think there's too much of a layering of the masculine on them.
Mm.
And you've kind of gone away from what feminine power is. And it's a bit of unraveling of those masculine tendencies. And because I think they come at the point when they're realizing that, okay, this is not right.
Yeah.
I cannot operate. They don't know what it is, okay? But that's when we do the work to get into that, to unravel. And then for her, she moved on from there. She was very clear on her leadership brand, and now she's a CEO of a very significant public services organization in Australia. Another client of mine, she was working in Rolls Royce. And then it was a time for her to decide whether she's going to go back into either working for a corporation organization or she's going to do her own business. And it was again the same journey and the same journey with her. And ultimately, she made the decision to move into her own business, and her business has done exceptionally very well. So I had a chance to work with some extremely talented and beautiful people through this, which I totally love.
One last question before we jump into digital HR: feminine power.
Mhm.
Um, my read is that doesn't necessarily only exist in the domain of someone who identifies as female. It's just a different form of power. Can you explain a little bit more there?
You're right. I think it's, we have masculine, we have feminine, and they both are needed. And the feminine is the creative. It's where the world comes into existence from. It's where we die, we go into the earth. That's the Mother Earth, where it all goes in over there.
Yeah.
And the masculine power is projectile. It's out there, it's penetrating, it's in the
Yeah.
world. You create something, you need that masculine energy to create it, but you do not need it all the damn time going like this, like
Yeah.
this. So, when you talk about when the wave of women and equality was there a year and a half ago, I still work on that stuff too. It's not, but the fact of the matter is that you talk about burnout for women, and they're working here, they're working at home, they're all that. I think that's secondary. I think the burnout is actually happening at a very spiritual level because they're working in
Mm.
containers which are very patriarchal, which is going against their grain, right?
Yeah.
So it's a bit of that. So I think it's a bit of recognizing of that. It's very hard as a concept to be teaching that unless the leader himself or herself hasn't reached that point of realization, which is where, the coaching kind of the work which I can do
Yeah.
especially with when it helps them on that journey. It helps them also to just let go of the bloody armor they're holding on to. They have to be like this.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. This is working with this guy. He's in Accenture right now. And even one person was a senior leader with another organizational media company. You can see when you ask them what you really want, it's such a hard question for them to answer because their heart wants something, but we are mired as men to be able to not accept it and say
Hmm.
something which is this, staccato. It has to be like this, nothing lyrical. And you can see on their face and on their mind, they want to say something else and they're not. Sometimes the journey to even get them to verbalize what their true needs and wants are. It's really
That's a huge question, being clear on what you want. And I see that the same. A lot of my female professional colleagues will run into the same problem. They'll be sitting there and you'll be talking about what they want. And they're like, well, I really want to get to the promotion and achieve this and that. And I'm like, no, but as a human, what do you want? And they don't feel comfortable in the workplace saying, well, I actually like more flexibility to attend, to my parents, my kids,
Mm,
my creative pursuits. Like I just think professionally, using your analogy of armor,
mm.
we've grown up in a society the last 20 or 30 years where we really put the corporate armor on and expect we're going into battle every
Yeah,
day.
all time. Yeah. It's a very interesting question I use for that. So they say that, okay, great, that's what you want on the outside. Now tell me what you really want on the inside. It's such a beautiful, gentle
Yeah,
question.
I like that question a lot. What you really want on the inside. Well, thank you for that, Puneet. And switching gears into digital HR, we've just started the conversation with such a human, holistic, um, you know, exploration there of how you work with people. But then, how do you then come to be jumping into the digital side where it's ones and zeros and you're using
Mhm.
technology to engage with people?
Oh, see, one is that I've worked in tech environments throughout now. Like, even when I was at GE, I started working with them 20, 25 years ago. I worked in GE Aircraft Engines, GE Analytics.
Yeah.
Then from there, I moved into a, small scaling tech company. And then all that, like when I was here last, when I was working for the Accenture company that I was working for, which got bought over, I was working with United and Continental. They were merging at the time. So
Yep.
I worked in flight operations. I worked in flight operations technology team over there. And then in my own consulting business. So been around that. I think it's fascinating. Once again, it is not about the technology because we know one thing. Technology is never the answer. It is the question. And the best technology is the one which ultimately gets used. Okay.
Yeah.
So bearing this in mind, once again, what I started to notice was that there is, of course, technology is not new. It's come and gone. It's come and gone. It's come and gone. Of course, now there's a complete different paradigm of technology that we're getting into
Mm.
because of, its capabilities to almost feel and think and everything which is happening and moving towards when we get to general artificial intelligence, who knows? But we are down the track fairly advanced in the capabilities that we've got with artificial intelligence right now. I don't claim to be an expert, but I'm curious about it. What I did notice that like working in with CHRO and stuff, their focus seems to be primarily around leveraging and being expedient in using large language models such as ChatGPTs and maybe other tools there across the life cycle, but on the last mile, I would say that. I mean, if I
Yeah.
was just to put it very simplistically, I'm sure there's a lot of variation, but I'm just sharing a common observation of mine. And of course, bounded rationality, I do not know everything. Uh, and then I was just thinking about it, okay, if I'm a CHRO, what would I be thinking about? So, like I said, first of all, what's the mindset? Because it's very interesting, correct? Now, if I have a mindset that do unto others like you want done unto yourself,
Uh
I
huh.
will behave in one way. But if my mindset is do unto others as they want to be done unto them,
Yes.
I will behave in a very different way. Just to illustrate the fact that it has to start with that orientation.
Yep.
So from there, it was okay. First, it has to be the framework we built is called the Digital First HR Maturity Framework. The reason it's called Digital First is for the simple reason that we are delivering these services digitally first to the employees, or at least if we are not there fully, we must be on that track to some extent or the other.
Yep.
And that means there needs to be a digital mindset to the way of working. And like, I mentioned up front, is that almost thinking about the HR operation or any operation run like a SaaS business. Okay, we've got different layers of technology in our tech stack. You've got the systems of record, then you've got the collaboration tools, you've got the listening tools, you've got various stacks of technology, correct?
Yeah.
So you're delivering a lot of that through tech. So it's almost that orientation of being a SaaS business leader in some ways.
Yeah.
And then again, I've done enough of change work, correct? Different things, different tech, different changes. We know 80-90% of the tech changes, they don't land because the people side of it, the wider side of the change and the communication, the clarity around it, all that generally tends to be missing. Some a few people get together, they feel it's the right technology or this is the right process. Okay, let's do that. Maybe you can do it for a few people, but I think it gets really hard when you go beyond into large scale organizations. So
Yeah.
having done enough change work as well, OT work, operations I've run to, I just felt that, see, it's not going to work if you don't step back and look at what's going on holistically. But not only just for the sake of technology, but I think just where we are today, it's probably a good time to take a step back and look at the entire HR operation and say, are we ready for what's coming ahead? Are we ready for the intergenerational change that is happening so rapidly?
Mm.
And what is coming out over there? So, based on that, the framework that we have built has got 6 different elements to it. It's got strategy, it's got culture, it's got technology, it's got data, it's got process, and it's got your skills. So the engagement would be on 2 different kinds. One is that looking into the organization, having the conversation. The other thing, which is, I would say, I would like to call out in the way we are working with this is, again, bearing in mind that this is in service to the CHRO. My
Mhm.
job, our job is to elevate the CHRO so that they are seen as a strategic business leader, right? And in some cases, it's already the case, and in some cases, it's not the case. So let's assume where it's not the case for a second over here for the
Yeah.
conversation. So the job over there is to elevate the CHR. And how do you do that, right? If we're going to do this work, if we're going to give them recommendations, the last thing I want is we have done the work, we present it, and then the CHRO has to then start going and selling it internally in the organization, which is what generally happens in consulting. You will go there, whether depending on what kind of consulting you do, whether you do strategy or you operational, etc. So you do your consulting. In this case, it is I use a measure, evaluate, recommend approach. Within about 5 to 8 weeks, the study is completed.
Mhm.
But then, and they get the recommendations, and it's broken up into work streams and prioritized between X, Y, and Z. So what we do is right up front as we're starting, we want to have the business stakeholders right up front in the conversation. We want to have the senior tech leaders there, at IT or the CTO level, depending on the size.
Yep.
We want to have somebody from finance in over there because that's where they'll get the most headwinds from, because you're also competing with the organizational resources. So we begin the whole thing with a kickoff with these stakeholders. We build a coalition, a cross-functional coalition in the organization, just like some basic classic agile tools of doing work, right? But the beauty is, when I was working for GE 25 years ago, they were doing all this stuff then. I mean, they were
It's
just
cool. You're
like,
leading edge at that stage.
all of us had to be Six Sigma certified, otherwise they would sack you. So all of that, this thinking it's
Yeah.
not been that much of a sea change for me. So then moving around there, doing the work, we do the study, there are 4 diagnostics that deep dive into the tech part of it as well. So, for example, when we do this, we do tech stack evaluation. We look at the tech stack. We look at the across the life cycle, what they're using, which country, what are they using it for, what is their internal perception of fit for purpose. Once we have all that data with us, we then begin the cost benefit analysis. Correct.
Mm.
Let's look at it. What are you paying for it? How many resources are getting used? What is the cost to you? What's the benefit to you? With that, we come out with a 4 blocker, which will tell them the current value and the future value of the technologies that they have got.
Interesting.
Now, those which have got low current value and low future value will be identified as the tech debt for the organization, which they want to get rid of. That's where they will find dollars for doing other work.
Yep.
So that's one thing. But then how do we close that? We close that in a workshop. So once we've done the findings, the CTO or somebody senior from the technology team comes in, the HR stakeholders there, it's put up. Okay, let's talk. Because we're also building in this change thing. We're familiarizing finance, we're familiarizing IT, HR is doing this work, and this should not be a new conversation. When you're sitting as a senior leadership team and there's a conversation around budget, allocation, capex, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Just doing that all the way along. This so CHRO is really well positioned to do what they need to be doing in the work to serve the organization, uplift the organization. So we'll do that for the tech piece. But then on the other side, when we complete the holistic study, the 6 different elements of it, then we will again have the finance team, we'll have the tech team, we'll have the business stakeholders, we will workshop it. Here are the recommendations. Here are our recommendations. What should be phase one, prioritize phase two. But you live in the environment. Now you have to discuss and you have to debate, and we facilitate the conversation for
Cool.
them to plot it on what has the most impact and which has the most feasibility in the organization at this point in time. So once again, the change management is also getting in place.
It's built in.
Yeah.
I like the way you build it into the methodology by bringing the teams in and doing the workshops together. Just for clarity though, Puneet, are you looking at only what would traditionally be deemed as HR tech, or are you looking at all of the technologies that help people do their work in a business, including like procurement, inventory systems,
See, right
accounting
now,
systems?
there is a media and entertainment company that I met. I went for this conference for AI in Hollywood. I just fascinated by how they, because I mean, if you look at Hollywood, it's a story of technology, correct?
Yeah,
When you talk about it, whether it's strike, AI, people are striking, but fundamentally, it's a story of technology. If you look at it from a high pick, look at the movies getting created and now
yeah,
AI and the animation and all that. So I just wanted to go there for a bit of inspiration, met a couple of interesting people. And we're talking about the same framework. There's no reason it can't be used in operations, right? It's a
got it.
methodology, it's a way of doing things. But right now, the first case study we did was with a scaling tech company. I think they're about 300 or $400 million in revenue, about
Hmm.
700 people. We're able to find them close to $3 million in return on the investment based on the recommendations made.
Yep,
Also help them up level their exit valuation in a 4-year period when they're looking to exit. So that's
that's
one
cool.
very real case study we've just recently completed. We are looking for another 2 pilots. So we are just doing it at almost like on a pay as you wish or a very low price right now for 2 other organizations. So that's what the stage we
That's
are
how you
right
do it.
now.
Yeah, and that is looking at their HR technologies, to be
Yeah,
clear.
so right now it is for them, or it could be an operations leader, but it would be looking at the entire elements, strategy, culture, process, tech, people,
Yeah.
and
So everything from where you hire people, onboard them, train them, give them performance appraisals, access to benefits,
you see, I
all
mean,
of
that
that.
gets determined by what they provide as data, right? So we have framework, and then we will pipe into the organization, asking them to do the evaluation.
Yeah.
Then from there, we will understand what are they saying are the key pain points, and then based on that, we will have some prioritized recommendations, but also very clearly identify clear the return on the investment. The
Yes.
language we're using in the recommendations is very much a finance language of business, so that they can speak to a CEO, they can speak to a CFO, they can speak to anybody just using a business language, right? So, and to make it easy for them to be able to do the internal selling job as well.
Yeah. Okay. That's really neat. No, I like how structured it is. And again, just bringing the team in. I know there's a lot of HR leaders out there right now that they were called upon to, I guess, transform their businesses when COVID first hit. And they did a whole lot of different things. They added a lot of tools. And then as we came out of COVID, there was a level of fatigue. There was a level of pulling back on budget from some executive teams. And I've sensed there's been some dysfunction in
Mm.
many organizations around, hey, you helped me out of COVID, but now I need you to change all of that stuff that you built. And so I think that's a problem. So it sounds to me like any of our listeners that are out there that have come through that roller coaster, which has been the last few years, maybe have more tech debt and technologies than they need. This type of process is a really good starting place.
Yeah, and I think also if they just want to take a step back and reevaluate the capability of their people function, how ready are they? for what's coming up front, etc., then I think it's a good way to just take an overall objective perspective as to
Yeah.
where are we. Because see, ultimately, all this has to work in tandem. Whether you're looking at culture, your tech has to be in place for the culture,
Yeah.
to support the culture, to support the values, the right technology, the right things it does will support your culture. If you look at the data or you look at the processes. So it just works very interconnectedly, right? If
Yeah.
they are sorted out in most of it and they're just dealing with primarily, we just want to look at this, we want to look at the Gen AI opportunity. Can we look at that and make some recommendations across the life cycle? What could be the right things? And that could be very specific engagement over there.
Yeah, that's neat. So my final question for today, Puneet, is around something that you mentioned pre-show. We were talking about what excites you about the future of teamwork, and you said this evergreen quality of humanity and the fact that opportunities and obstacles and new technologies are going to continue to present themselves, but humans will also continue to find pathways through. So maybe you could touch on that and this concept of enlightened leadership to kind of be leading those teams
That's true.
through all of this change.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it that there are trends right now. There's remote working, there's asynchronous learning, there is agentic AI, and working with robots and working with all these things. But if you look at it, I mean, from a perspective of high performing teams, if you think about it, I think there are a few things over there. One is that, there's a Japanese phrase called itai doshin, which means many in body and one in mind.
Huh.
And that's so incredible. I mean, that describes the ideal state of unity. The phrase is used to encourage people to transcend their differences, working together towards a common goal.
Mm.
So very much if you look at it from a change management perspective, that's really important. When you look at it from a leadership perspective, that
Yeah.
also is a storytelling aspect that we resonate with as human beings, which will, I think it's never going to go out of fashion.
Yeah.
So, so I think there are things like that. There's the psychological safety we spoke about, which will come from leadership that is, first of all, in themselves psychologically feeling safe and secure. It cannot come otherwise. Otherwise, it will come and it will go, and you will do it and you will not do it, and you will promise that I will have your weekly one-to-ones. You will not do it because you don't understand the value, the importance of that.
Yeah.
Create that bond with the people and having that. So I do feel that a quality of leadership which is more enlightened in the sense that leaders are very self-aware
Hmm.
about themselves. They understand the value of introspection. They create environments where the teams can get to know themselves in themselves very well, but also each other very, very well. Um, and the fact of the matter is, whether it's a human being, an individual, a team, or an organization, in my opinion, what is creating the high performance also is that ability to be consistently out of your comfort zone day in, day out, day in, day out.
Yeah.
You can't do it, you can't continuously, but that's where teamwork comes in.
Yep.
You're riding that wave, and when somebody is not right up, but the person is committed, and you don't mind then covering up in those days, like whether it's basketball, any sport, or as we are. And I like the distinction that Reed Hastings created for Netflix: team and not family.
Mm.
Family is different distinction, a
Yeah.
team is different distinction. We are for a specific purpose, and we are here to deliver a certain result. And it's not like you'll be whoever you are and you'll be accepted endlessly. I don't think that's true. It should not be the case, because you're creating sloppiness, you're creating
Yes.
poor performance. You're going to just reduce that lower common denominator and the talent density, to use some cliches, I suppose. But I think there are a few things like this, and that whole thing about the vision, the clarity, the ability of the leader to also be being very clear on the conditions of satisfaction, what is expected from the people.
Yeah.
You see that even today, that okay, how do you delegate this, how do you do this? Oh, it's that distinction of expectation versus agreement. And expectation is that, okay, you come and you will come and do this job, and you'll be a business partner in the organization, and you come and take care of these 3 areas.
Yeah.
So you think about it, that this is what this means to me. This person has lived a different life, has come from a different continent, and they're going to do something completely different. So
Yeah.
that's where just clear agreements means that both of us understand the same thing in the same way. So whether this is coming now, agentic AI is here, let's understand what it means for us, what are going to be the expectations, how we're going to do what. You just pivot to the same framework, whether it's today is this or tomorrow is that. But the other one last thing I would say before we wrap, I know both of us have to leave soon, is that the ability to be curious and learn, otherwise you are
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
I think that's so fundamental right now, that if that brain is not curious, then there is fear. Because the first thing what happens, correct? What I mean, David
Yeah.
Jones' scarf model, you may be familiar with, so fantastic. It just, I mean, the first thing which happens to us the moment you're saying, okay, you will be moved from here to there, nothing to do with a leader. Our insecurities completely come up to the forefront. That reptilian brain, the amygdala hijack is happening, and you're frozen, and then you either will fight, freeze, fawn, or whatever your stress response is. Somebody get
Yeah.
aggressive, somebody goes silent, you'll see all these different things. And so that's where the clear communication comes in, and all these different items come in. That should be thought through before you get into these conversations with people. Before you go into your one-on-one with a person, just have some ideas as to what you're going to be speaking with. When you're doing your weekly or your monthly things,
Yeah.
having that level of intentionality behind it streamlines it. And just fortunately, the first 7, 8 years of my career, I worked with such phenomenal leaders that anything apart from it becomes very jarring to see.
Yeah, which is a gift because it's allowed you to then translate some of those best practices into your coaching and digital HR maturity mapping and consulting work. No, that's neat. I love the way that the conversations traveled today, Puneet. You're clearly very curious, very high wisdom, contributor to this whole space. So I appreciate what you've shared. That coaching piece neatly loops back into where we ended here around safe and secure leaders who are aware of and intentional about how they're creating the conversation and those conditions of satisfaction with their team members. And I love how the digital piece kind of creates the systems to reinforce those behaviors. So it's a cool model
Yeah.
that I've experienced today. So I'm excited to continue our relationship. And for any of our guests, how might they best find you and your articles and work?
I think LinkedIn is the easiest. Just go to LinkedIn, Puneet Sachdev, and if you want to have a look at the articles, most recently, 4 or 5 of them are on this piece on digital HR. I've written something on, again, holistic resilience. I'll send you a link to it. It may resonate with you if it is a
Yeah,
conversation, because people are putting resilience as one little thing. But once again, it's a lifestyle. I mean,
I
resilience is a
agree.
lifestyle. From what you do in the morning when you wake up, how you take care of your body, and what are your spiritual values, and how do you deal with people. It's just not one training where you put a few things in the person's head. That's come and that's gone the other end, right?
Yep.
So anyway, it's been a fascinating conversation, a long time coming. I really appreciate it. I've had a good time too.
No, it's been great, Puneet. Well, we'll talk soon. Thanks again
Yeah.
for your time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us. Remember that by embracing vulnerability, trusting our intuition, and approaching challenges with compassion, we not only strengthen our teams, but also pave the way for a future where collaboration thrives. If you're hungry for more insights, strategies, and research on collaboration, head over to thefutureofteamwork.com. There, you can join our mailing list to stay updated with the latest episodes and get access to exclusive content tailored to make your team thrive. Together, we can build the future of teamwork. Until next time.